Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Daniel. I'm a senior community liaison with Houston Police Department. I'm here today to explain to you how to survive an active shooting event. Unfortunately, we find these things happening more and more in our nation. They happen in our churches, they happen in our workplaces, they happen at the mall. Pretty much all the different places we frequent in our lives are potential active shooting situations. But the good news is there is a way to survive, and that is by predetermining how you would respond to an active shooter event. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's move ahead here. Now, we saw recently, about 3 weeks or so ago up in Colleyville, Texas, a troubled individual went into a Jewish synagogue and took people hostages for, I believe, about 11 hours. And at the 11th hour, literally, they saw their opportunity to escape. And they did, and thank goodness everybody was alive and well at the end of the aftermath, with the exception of the shooter who took his own life at that point, unfortunately. So, but what is the real reason for that? This church, they had active shooter training. The people knew what to do. They had their predetermined survival mindset already embedded in their memory. And that's what we're here today to do, to show you how to create your own personal, unique survival mindset for the world you live in. Let's begin with a first definition of an active shooter. One or more individuals actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area per the FBI. All right? Now, honestly, this is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That would be you, the victim of an active shooter, with your predetermined survival mindset. And the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, this does work. To date, I have 5 survivors that have come back and said, Mr. Daniel, what you taught saved my life when they started killing people all around me. Most recently was a lady attorney from downtown Houston. She was in Las Vegas at that terrible shooting. So the reality is, if you will follow my suggestions, do the visualization exercises, and you become the victim of an active shooter, you will have better than even chances of surviving that terrible event. Now, between 2000 and 2018, we can see the experience of active shooting. The majority of these things happen in the business place. But what really troubles me, candidly, is education. Where we send our children, our grandchildren to go to school, they have 20.6% of the shootings in that location. So we will talk about that a bit, but nonetheless, these things, as you can see, happen in pretty much every segment of our society. Now, we're going to talk about 6 categories of active shooting. Number 1 through 4 is what the FBI says you need to be concerned about. For some reason, they leave out medical facilities and general public. But I do think that's an essential part of the world we live in. So let's talk about each of those 6 categories just briefly here. Number 1, K through 12. It tends to be a white male shooter, and they have a history of trauma, and they really got into planning these things. If you look at the Columbine boys, they mapped that thing out with military precision. They knew exactly what they were going to do, how they were going to play this out. And they used multiple stolen guns. Well, why stolen guns? Come on, folks. How many 18, 19-year-olds can go out and legally purchase a gun? They cannot do that. So the reality is, if you have weapons in your home and you have young people, your children, your grandchildren, please keep those things secured. Take them out, teach them how to responsibly shoot the weapon if you like, but then come home, clean it, and lock it up. Don't leave it to their discretion on some bad day that they have access to get that weapon and act out in some way that we all will regret forever. Now, college and university shooter, it's a non-white male. Don't ask me why, I really have no idea. They do have a history of violence and childhood trauma. A tough time growing up, plain and simple. And they're suicidal. This makes it so much more difficult for law enforcement because when we get on scene, These people have nothing to lose whatsoever, and that really makes the situation much more difficult for the officers trying to bring this thing to a peaceful conclusion. And reality is, they legally obtain handguns, but you know, we just said 18, 19-year-olds can't legally buy a gun. But folks, remember when you were in school, if it was a Friday and you wanted to get that bottle of wine, but you were underage, could you get an upperclassman to go buy it for you? Absolutely. Same thing with a weapon. They can go out and legally purchase that weapon, and you have access to it right then. But let's talk about the workplace shooter. You may or may not recognize that picture. That's night transportation out in Katy, Texas, some couple of years ago. Now, there was an employee, and he got terminated, and he left. The next day, he comes back, walks right past all of his previous buddies that he worked with, went to the HR manager, shot and killed him, and then took his own life. But let me be honest with you. That is not an active shooter. And you say, but he killed people. Let me tell you, here's the difference. A true active shooter will never, ever pass up a living, breathing human being. To them, this is a video game, and they want to exceed the body count that the shooter in Norway did a few years back when he killed something like 80 individuals. That is their goal. They are visualizing this as a game, all right? So they're going to kill everybody they can, from basically, 1-year-old to 86 years old. It doesn't make any difference. They want human beings. That is their score. But let's talk about the real workplace shooter. It tends to be a male in his 40s. There's really no racial profile. They're all over the board. More likely than not, it's a blue-collar worker. And usually they use handguns or long guns that they have legally owned for quite some time. Now let's go to the house of worship shooter. This tends to be a white male in his 40s. They're suicidal with some type of prior criminal record or history of violence, and they usually use a handgun. I mean, realistically, walking into church on Sunday morning carrying a rifle, a little out of the ordinary. So usually it's something they can conceal, a handgun. They know the victims. This is what troubles me quite a bit. They've been to worship once or many times at this house of worship, and now they're coming back to kill as many people as they possibly can. And they really don't get into planning these things. All of a sudden, life just comes crashing in on these individuals, and they show up and create this horrible situation and kill just as many people as they possibly can. Now, medical facilities, well, it tends to be a middle to older age shooter with some perceived grievance. Okay, I came into the ER last night, and I had this terrible pain, and they ignored me. They basically gave me some aspirin and said, go home, you'll be fine. Well, I'm going to show them today, and they've come back now to settle a score with these people. But there's another group in the emergency room that you really need to watch out for. It's these gangbangers. They've gotten out here on the street. They shot it out against the other gang. They weren't really happy with the way it ended up. So now they're carrying the fight over to the emergency room. So folks, anytime that you have to go to the ER, it is really important that you pay attention to what's going on. I understand you're probably going to feel really rotten and lousy, or you wouldn't be there. But it's essential that you pay attention and try to get a seat with your back to the wall, not out in the middle of the room. And figure out, if somebody comes in there, what are your options to get out of there? Where are the exits? You've got to figure this stuff out ahead of time, because once somebody comes in and starts shooting is not the time to determine how you're going to escape. Now, general public, well, these are places, frankly, that we all go on a very regular basis, ladies and gentlemen. So we really need to think about this. Now, here's the trick, too. Let's say it's Saturday, you're walking through the Galleria. And what are you doing? Well, you have that phone in your hand. You're texting away. Your entire attention is on the screen of that little cell phone. You're not paying attention to what's going on around you. You are making yourself a prime target for any active shooter that comes in. They're going to look at you and see you as their first easy target. So please, if you have to text, back up against the showcase window. Now you have some 180 degrees that you have to focus on, but don't just walk through the mall totally absorbed in that cell phone, not paying attention to your surroundings. That is the recipe for disaster. Now, in 2019, the FBI said we had 28 active shooting incidents. If you Google this, you will find some situations where they say, oh, there were 150, 160. Folks, those were not true active shooting incidents. And you say, yeah, but people died. What's the difference? The difference is very important, and that is the way these shooters think, and that determines how we respond to them. In 2019, we had 97 people killed, 150 wounded, 2 law enforcement officers died, 40% of the shooters committed suicide, 30 of the shooters, of them, 29 were male and only 1 female. And unfortunately, in the great state of Texas, we led the nation that year with 6 incidents in Texas. So we're as likely here in Texas to be the victim of an active shooter as anywhere else in the country. And we'll talk more specifically about that in just a moment. Now, in 2019, we had 5 of the shooters commit suicide, 10 were killed, 15 were apprehended. Statistically, you are not going to be the victim of an active shooter. So why worry about it? Well, just take a look at those 5 bullet points. And you might notice, of those 5 situations, 3 are in the greater Houston area. So the reality is, we're as likely, if not more so, than anywhere else in the country to become the victim of an active shooter. So how do I survive? Well, that's a pretty good question. I have a picture up there of 26 individuals. If you count them, you'll find that there's 20 children and 6 educators. They're from Sandy Hook Elementary. Imagine in your mind just how long 4 minutes is. That's precisely how long it took to kill all 26 of those human beings. So ladies and gentlemen, best case scenario, we hit the scene in 4 to 6 minutes. So the reality is, this definitely could be entirely up to you whether or not you survive this terrible event. That's why it is so absolutely critical that we all have our own personalized, unique survival mindsets for the worlds we live in. Now, talking of survival mindset, I break this down into 3 categories. Number 1 is really rare. It's instinctive survival mindset. To be perfectly honest, in 30 years of active shooting experience, I really only find 1 serious example of an instinctive survival mindset. That was a few years back up in Indianapolis, Indiana, at a middle school. Young boy, 12, 13 years of age, comes to school with a gun, starts to shoot. Shoots a 13-year-old girl. Then this teacher goes into action, tackles the kid, gets him on the ground, stops the shooting. Now, unfortunately, the teacher got himself shot 3 times, but that was on a Monday, and I noticed on the national news by Friday, he was out watching a school softball game. So I guess, amazingly, that teacher is doing reasonably okay. But I can't tell you how incredibly rare it is that somebody has an instinctive survival mindset. This is where I really hope each and every one of you place yourself in the coming days. It's a developed survival mindset. You take this information I present to you today and you visualize it work, a gunman coming in, using the run, hide, fight tactics and techniques. But you don't stop there. You also visualize it worship. And then you visualize at the grocery store, at the movie theater, all the different places you go on a regular basis. You visualize being there, a gunman coming in, using the run, hide, fight tactics and techniques. And I'm telling you, in 2.5 or 6 years from now, God forbid, you become the victim of an active shooter, odds are quite good you're going to make an intelligent choice that significantly improve your odds of survival. But unfortunately, despite my best efforts, the majority of people fall into my 3rd category, and for lack of a better term, I just call them ostriches. They're sticking their head in the sand. oh, that's not going to happen to me. And you know, statistically, they are right. But ladies and gentlemen, statistically, you're not going to be in a fatal car wreck today. Do you want to go out and drive recklessly? Of course not. So I think it's really prudent that we all take time to create our own personalized, unique survival mindsets for the worlds we live in. So creating this survival mindset. Well, number one, I'm going to have to bring you out of your comfort zone just a little bit. You can handle this, trust me. In doing so, you're likely now to establish some good sound logic and data up there in your brain. And in a crisis, more likely than not, you're going to make the right choice. And that is what is so absolutely critical. Now, if you want to be a hero, that's fine. Go ahead. Odds are quite good you'll get yourself killed. Now, here's a trick, though. If you want to assist others, you do it as you're escaping. Get up, get out. And you can yell at people, follow me, come this way, whatever you want to do. But for that person frozen with fear, stuck in the corner, and they don't know what to do, you do not stop and beg and plead with them to follow you, because you likely will get yourself shot and killed. That is not going to help them a bit. It definitely will not help you. We do know calm is contagious. If you've got your survival mindset in a crisis, you're going to be a little calmer, a little more under control than everyone else around you. People are going to see that, and instinctively, they're going to follow your lead, because we know it's a fact. Leadership fills vacuums, and intelligent responses save lives. Look, I can't tell you how many active shootings I've reviewed, and candidly, some of the things people do are just crazy. They make no sense at all, and those responses likely will get you killed. So that's why it's so important that we all have our predetermined survival mindsets created during a time of peace and calm. Because that is the only goal we have, ladies and gentlemen, is to go home alive, period. Now, we're going to watch a video here called Excursion. It's out of Australia. Dr. Stuart Bender has put this together, and I'm telling you, this is absolutely excellent for active shooting training. Once you view this, I will assure you, you will have the strongest feeling of being a victim of an active shooter that you could have without truly being a victim of an active shooter.
My whole teaching career has been about control. Control and authority. Being in charge. And for the first time in my life, I felt those things just slip away.
Hi there, I'm Miles Stevens from Bayview High School. We're here to meet with Professor Whitman.
Wow, that's correct. I think you're in lecture room 213, that's in the east wing. Can you sign in here, please?
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Next, you have a library tour booked for 11 with Alice.
Hi.
Hi.
Need the map to help you get you there.
Thank you.
The lifts and the stairs to level 2 are just down the corridor, but when you get to level 2, you could go all the way to the end to get to room 213.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Clara, we're ready to go, guys. So let's head off down this way.
Come on in, guys.
Charles, how are you? You look fantastic.
Oh, it's good to see you. How's high school treating you?
Oh, beats working for a living.
No, bet it does.
Anyway, we'll just settle these guys down.
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Westcast. I hear a few of you are interested in perhaps attending our university next year.
One.
We offer a series of student scholarships. They're available to you, I mean, it's on an application basis. So, the Academic Studentship Award covers books and materials and your personal computer, as it says. It also covers things like
Put it down.
No, please.
Do. Yes, on this.
You could go and you're able to work, maybe make a little bit of money on the side. In order to apply for one of these exchange programs,
Do you hear that?
fill out forms again. So in order to do that, you can come see something like me. That tells you where to go. You can go to the
What
admin
is that?
forms up there. Maybe go and get my file.
It's getting louder, isn't it?
Yeah, just keep breathing. Just gently breathe.
Get yourself for that. Or again. Seems very popular today. Hello?
I need to get the kids out of the library, the school kids. It's horrible. They're shooting here. Please.
Alright guys, it seems that the university has been kind enough to spare you from any more of my lecture by having an evacuation drill. So if we get you guys all to get up, head towards the doors, go to your right and down the stairs, okay? Thank you.
Before you move, just remember, we're moving very calmly and quietly, no rushing, all right? We're working our way to the nearest exit, so let's stick together. What's going on, Charles?
Guys, just downstairs and to the left, okay? I'm not sure. Don't tell the kids. There's something weird going on.
Up it. Upstairs.
Keep coming this way, it's just a drill, nothing to worry about. Get going. Come on up here, sir, guys. Gotta make sure we've got everybody.
Go, John. Yes, come to the house, please. Quickly.
Shit! Everybody back!
Miles, what the hell?
We gotta get out of here.
Clara, take the kids and go. Let's go. Down the other end, there should be an exit.
Come on, go! Go, go, move!
Come on, guys, follow me.
Go, boys, run!
Come on, just keep running. Katie!
Come on! Fucking get it together! See you on the other side.
There's nowhere to go from here, we're meant to fight. Okay?
Fucking serious shit, gun! Keep your mouth shut. Go get out of here. Trust me, shut up. Get us killed. Suck on these faggots!
Don't move!
You, I'm gonna kill real fucking slow.
Move another inch and it'll be the last thing you ever do.
You don't have the balls, old man.
I do.
Stephen, you guys take everyone down. Head straight out of the building and call for help.
You miss, we can't leave
We don't
you.
have time for this, just go.
Leaving so soon. Killed him.
It was us or him. I want you to get your shit together right now. Cody, we start with Jackson. I want the two of you to lock the door behind me when I go. Okay?
Do you love God?
Does he love me?
Well, today's the day. You gotta find out.
Get away from her. Drop the gun.
Do you believe in God?
Drop the fucking gun. Drop it!
I know it sounds cliche, but those kids are like my kids. My responsibility. You can't make choices about who lives and dies.
I see his face every night, and I just keep thinking, why not me? Why did I survive?
I think Dr. Stuart Bender has done an excellent job of capturing the emotion of an active shooting event. So that is precisely why it's so important that we have our predetermined survival mindsets ahead of time so that we can do the best possible to control the emotion that we're going through. And without a doubt, you will have a lot of emotion running through you at this point. So they're shooting. What do I do? That's a good question. Number one, trust your eyes, not your ears. Sound reverberates. It may sound like he's on one side of the room and in essence is on the other. So number one, trust your eyes. And then secondary, trust your ears. Have a predetermined escape route. Figure out, hey, if I'm at the movie theater and something goes down, where are the exits? How do I get out of here? Think about these things ahead of time. And if you're outside, you're running, don't run in a straight line. You make such an easy target. Zigzag like the deer in the woods, back and forth. Make yourself as difficult to target as possible for the shooter, all right? But slow down, assess the situation. I just said hurry up and get out. Well, look, all I'm talking about is just take 2 or 3 seconds. You will find in an emotional, critical situation like this that your mind will do marvelous things. And that is, it will slow down. And in 2 or 3 seconds, that will seem like an extended period of time where now if you have your survival mindset, you can process what's going on and you can truly make the very best decision possible for that situation that you find yourself in. So slow down, assess the situation. Now, here's the second definition of an active shooter. This comes from the National Tactical Officers Association. The real key, candidly, down there where it talks about robbery and kidnapping. Major takeaway, an active shooter is not like your average criminal. He's wired totally different. Example, this guy wakes up one day and says, man, I am broke. I need money to go out tonight and party, have a good time. So he grabs a weapon, goes down to the nearest bank, walks in, sticks a gun in their face, says, I need to make a withdrawal. Well, they do the smart thing. They start loading up his little bag full of cash. He's getting all giddy-gay and excited. Wow, is he going to have a really great time tonight? He turns to leave, and wouldn't you know, there stands a uniformed HPD officer. This officer just came in to cash an extra duty check. Now, this guy's in jail, and oh my gosh, the poor officer, he or she, has about 3 hours worth of paperwork. But that's the reality. But what about a true active shooter? Well, let's go to Sparks Middle School a few years back out in Reno, Nevada. This young boy comes to school that morning with a gun. He's out on the playground shooting and killing other students. And then this teacher, Michael Lansbury, you see there, former Marine, he does exactly as you'd expect him to do. He walks up to the young boy on the playground. Son, calm down. Relax. We're going to get you through this. Trust me. And the child pulls the trigger. Michael Lansbury dies in the dirt on the playground. So the reality is, folks, once they've pulled the trigger, there is no talking them down. They have nothing to lose. They're going to continue their killing spree. We do know 60% of the active shooting events are over before the police can ever arrive. So the reality is, you or I may play a significant role in bringing this thing to the best outcome possible. Now, basically today, I'm going to give you a toolkit of ideas. For me to sit here today and say, look, hey, in 2.5 or 6 years from now, when you're the victim of an active shooter, well, you should do X, Y, or Z. That's absurd. There's no way I can do that. Basically, all I can do is give you this toolkit of ideas that through visualization you will store in your brain, and in that crisis, you are going to make the critical life and death decision for yourself. That is the only successful way for this to work, folks, okay? Now, let's talk about Sandy Hook. A few years ago, I had a chance to spend half a day with Colonel Danny Steubens, Connecticut State Police. Colonel Steubens was in charge of managing this horrible event. Learned quite a bit from the colonel that day. We're not going to go into all the gruesome details, but there's a couple of highlights we do need to talk about. Number one, after the people of Newtown, Connecticut buried 20 of their precious children and 6 of their educators, this is what took place. They all got together and they met in the schoolhouse and they had a discussion. The end result was they voted to bulldoze down a perfectly good elementary school, but they didn't stop there. They bulldozed down the house the shooter grew up, probably $1 million to $2 million, and that's what they did because they thought, well, they could eliminate the reminders of this horrific event up there in Newtown, Connecticut. But we all know that is impossible to do because the most deadly reminders are those in our mind and in our hearts, where that we long for the people that we've lost, the children, the teachers. That is reality. So Steubens also told me, he said, Stephen, 50% of my officers that engaged in this thing, they came to me later and said, Colonel, I can't ever do that again. They gave up their careers in law enforcement. They moved on to find new professions. Steubens and the 50% that remained, they're all getting counseling on a regular basis. Ladies and gentlemen, these horrible events do not just drift away. They linger for an incredibly long period of time. Now we see the picture of the little lady up there. That phone call just advised her precious child is dead. She came out 3 weeks later and made this statement. We cannot control the situations that come to us in life. We can only choose how to respond to them. There has never been a truer statement. You cannot control what's going to happen to you this afternoon, good, bad, or indifferent. You can control how you respond to that. That is a fact, folks. So having your predetermined survival mindset, should you ever become the victim of an active shooter, turns out to be incredibly important to you, folks. Now, we learned some valuable lessons from Las Vegas, did we ever, okay? Now, number one, when you get to a venue, look around, figure out if something bad goes down, how do I escape? How do I get out of here? That is critical. Whether you're at Discovery Green or a Rockets game or the rodeo, know what the options are ahead of time. Don't wait till a moment of panic and crisis to try to determine how you get away from danger. And I can't tell you how many victims of active shooters all said the same. I heard the shots, but come on, I thought it was fireworks. Ladies and gentlemen, any loud sound out in public, it's a gunshot until proven otherwise. If you're wrong, so what? If you're correct, that may give you the added 2 or 3 seconds you need to survive this terrible, terrible event. But be prepared to render aid. Let me tell you, Las Vegas, they had over 300 casualties, ranging from fatalities to simply minor injuries. But this is so important that you know how to render aid. All right, so you're at a situation like Las Vegas, and here's somebody that's been shot. They're laying on the ground, they're bleeding to death. Within 5 minutes, you can bleed out, folks, and be dead. So it's important that you know how to respond to this. Put pressure on the wound to put a tourniquet on. And hey, this may not be just a stranger, it could be a loved one. How hopeless and powerless are you going to feel to watch one of your loved ones die before you because you never bothered to learn how to deal with this kind of crisis? But how are you going to do that? Well, here's just one option. It's a course called Stop the Bleed. It's put on by Southeast Texas Regional Advisory Council. You can call Cat Samuel at that phone number on the screen. and set up a training. She'll come out to your organization and conduct this training for about an hour, hour and a half, and you learn the fundamentals of first aid for gunshot wounds. This is absolutely critical. And the price is right, folks. There is no charge for this training. And she goes within a 17-county area around southeast Texas. So give her a call, get her scheduled, get the training. You may realize later on that this was one of the most valuable and important things you've ever done in your entire life. Now, the FBI says there's 5 phases to an active shooter. I agree 100% with them. They're right on target, in my opinion. They fantasize. They obsess. Oh, I'm going to be so great. Everybody's going to know my name. My name is going to be all across the news, across this country. Yeah, right, okay. Then they create a plan. We saw the Columbine boys. They mapped that thing out with military precision. They had a plan that just took in every single detail. And they prepare. They may go out and buy the G.I. Joe garb, all this stuff that makes them feel strong and macho. But now what did the Columbine boys do? Well, that wasn't the route they took. They got the long black cowboy dusters. They were the rough, tough cowboys. That was their image and what they wanted to do. And then they practiced. Again, Columbine, they went out and target practice. In fact, they had their friends videotape it. And oh, number 5, they kill all these people. Now, what's critical about this, ladies and gentlemen? There's a timeline. These are not spontaneous events. So during this time, these troubled individuals cannot help but put off certain signals, certain red flags, certain suicidal indicators. And if you are consistently around them and you know what to watch out for, you may be able to do what? Intercede and intervene. How would you do that? Well, actually, there's several different options. Number 1, pretty rare, direct intervention. Hey, sit down, Charlie, we need to talk. Most people are not good with that. That's understandable. Go to your supervisor, go to HR, senior management. But if nobody in the organization is comfortable dealing with it, that's okay. Give us a call. We just happen to be the only major police department in America that has an entire division that focuses on dealing with the mentally ill. In that division, we have 18 to 20 CIT officers, crisis intervention trained. On any given day, we take 4 of those officers, we pair them up with clinicians from the Mental Health Association, we put them in patrol cars, and they go about the city of Houston. We get a 911 call with a mental health nexus, we get one of those teams on scene. If the shooter has not pulled the trigger, we have a real good track record of talking them down, because what you got to understand, this person may be a paranoid schizophrenic, which means the average person doesn't have a chance in the world of communicating with them. But our trained professionals, they have a pretty good understanding of how they can reach people that are paranoid schizophrenics. And they do have a good track record of talking these people down. And if you have concerns or questions, maybe somebody at work is acting in a peculiar manner and you're concerned, give us a call at that phone number. We will be more than happy to share our knowledge and our experience with you. And if that's not enough, we will certainly recommend to you people in the mental health field that could address your concerns a little bit more completely than we're capable of doing. So call and help us all prevent another tragic event. We're working in the schools, we're putting these posters up. You go, well, a poster, what good is that? Well, let me tell you, most of these young people in school, what's one of the worst things that could happen? You know, they could be called a snitch, a rat, for telling on one of their buddies. But we've got an idea here, and that is putting these posters in a school. These young folks, they see that, and now they know they have an opportunity to reveal what they know. Because the other day, Sam invited Johnny over to his house and said, man, I want to show you some stuff. And he shows him his guns, his gear, And he says, look, man, next Tuesday, don't come to school. Stay home. Tell your mom you're sick. Don't come to school next Tuesday. Well, this kid, he's no fool. He figures out what his buddy's about to do. But again, he doesn't want to be a snitch or a rat. But now he has that avenue to contact us and let us know, because we will never, ever follow up on that phone number, trace the call. We will not do that. So he calls, he shares the information, and we can get out there and get his buddy the help, mental health help that he needs, and avoid another one of these great tragedies. But nobody's going to know. His mom, his dad, the teachers, the principal, nobody's going to know that it was him that tipped us off. So we do have high hopes these posters are going to make a significant difference in avoiding these terrible situations in our schools. Now we're going to go through 3 slides here pretty quick of warning signs, so just pay attention. They're argumentative, they're uncooperative with supervisors, they have rage reactions, they're always a victim, they blame others, increase accidents, they make a lot of mistakes, they manipulate and exploit others, they bully, threaten, or committing violence, they're withdrawn, depressed, they avoid co-workers, they have increased drug and alcohol abuse, increased absenteeism, noticeable decrease in grooming and personal hygiene, increased severe mood swings, unstable emotional responses, suicidal talks, putting things in order. If this is a coworker or a friend, they may come up to you one day and say, hey, I just got my will rewritten, everything's organized, everything's in place. Trust me, it's not going to be a problem for you or anybody. I got it all mapped out, okay? That's the kind of crazy talk they're likely to share with you. They're paranoid. What a surprise there. Increased talks of problems at home. They can't work those things out, so they bring them to work and thinking that you're going to step in and help figure it out for them. But if you're smart, you will run from that opportunity as fast as you can. They talk of previous incidents of violence. And they express empathy for individuals committing violence. They're the kind, after the massacre at the movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, they're likely to show up at work the next day and say something like this. Did you see the Joker? Did you see a dude, he came alive? Those people he put down that movie theater, they didn't get up. That was the real deal. None of this Hollywood make-believe stuff. Oh no, that was the real thing. That's the kind of crazy talk they're likely to share with you, ladies and gentlemen. Increased unsolicited comments about firearms, other deadly weapons, and violent crimes. Now, to be perfectly honest, folks, on pretty much any given day driving to work, probably 1 or 2 of those characteristics apply to me. But the key to all this is consistency. Do you see somebody day in, day out, week in, week out, consistently exhibiting a handful of those characteristics? If you do, please get some type of intervention going at one of those levels we just discussed. That is absolutely critical. But if you come to work on Monday and you see somebody, one of your coworkers, exhibiting 1 or 2 of those characteristics, don't freak out. Maybe they just had a bad weekend. But if they continue to consistently exhibit those characteristics, yes, please get some type of intervention going. When shots are fired, the first thing you want to do is run. Escaping is always your first option, all right? Now look, if it happens to be a weekend, maybe you're wearing that bright lime green jogging suit. Smart idea, cover it up or strip it off. Because if you're running and I'm the shooter and I see that bright color, that most likely is going to be my target. That's not cool, so cover it up. Don't make yourself an enhanced target for the shooter. Now, if you're on the first floor of a building, you hear shots, you get up, you look down the hall, you see the shooter and people dropping blood, oh my gosh, and you say, when he's looking the other way, I'll turn and run down the hall the opposite direction. Please don't do that, because as soon as you step in the hall, odds are he's going to spin around, shoot, and kill you. Turn right around. Walk back through that building, get to an outside window, open or break the window, and go to safety, folks, okay? Now, if you're on the second floor, I'd suggest you strongly considering opening the window or breaking it and jumping from the second floor. Odds are, for you young folks, you're going to bounce right back, get up and brush it off. That's it. For us older guys, hey, it's probably going to get us 1 or 2 months of rehab. But trust me, it is far better than getting shot with that AK-47. But now if you're on the 3rd floor or higher of a building, all of a sudden, it's not the smartest move to go jumping out the window. So here's the deal. 3rd floor or anything higher, it's a different ballgame. The field of play is the floor you're on. You're not going to get on the elevator, because if those doors reopen and he's there, you have absolutely no chance. Stairwells, those are off limits. Fire department, they love their concrete fireproof stairwells, but let me tell you, for an active shooter, it's nothing more than a vertical shooting gallery with the added benefit if he misses, the ricochet may kill you. Stay out of the stairwells. So, 3rd floor or higher, you got to know all the hideouts, file rooms, copy rooms, restrooms, whatever the case may be. That is absolutely essential. Know where you can take refuge and secure the door. And look, if you're sitting there and you hear shots and you got a pair of scissors, grab them, take them with you. But leave all your stuff behind. This is not a time you need your backpack or that huge purse, ladies. I'm sorry, leave your stuff behind. If you can grab those scissors and take them with you, that's fine. In case running doesn't work, hiding fizzles out, and you got to go hands-on face-to-face, it's a good thing to have the scissors. But folks, don't bother with anything else. It only will slow you down, and that could make the difference in living or dying, period. Now, hiding. Try to find a room that you can get in and lock the door or barricade it. Let me share this with you. 30 years of active shooting experience. I cannot find a single episode in thousands where that the shooter breached a door that was secured somehow. You go, why is that? Because they know they have about 6 minutes to shoot and kill as many people as possible before we get there and put a stop to it. So get in a room, barricade the door. Turn off the lights, turn off your cell phones. Stand clear of the door. Now, while the sheetrock wall is much easier for them to shoot through, for some reason psychologically, they tend not to do that. But out of frustration, they're likely going to fire through the door. And you don't want to be standing behind that door. So stand to the side of the door, folks. Now you see there, I've taken 2 square feet of commercial door. If you measure these, they're about 1.5 inches thick, hunk of wood. You'd say, that would be pretty good to get behind when the guy's shooting. Well, as I said, I took that 2 square feet, I gave it to my guys at SWAT and said, hey, do your thing. They shot that with everything from a .22 to a .308. For you non-gun people, that's a small gun to a really big gun. Look at the other side of the door. Every round came through with what I call terminal velocity. In other words, you're standing behind that door and you get shot with any of those rounds and get hit in a vital organ, the odds are quite good you will die. So standing behind the doors is not a good idea, ladies and gentlemen, all right? Now, weapons. Most of the places that we go and work, we're not allowed to bring our weapons with us, but there's still weapons everywhere regardless. My favorite, fire extinguishers. We got those pretty red fire extinguishers by fire code pretty much everywhere we turn. Grab that thing, and if you're standing beside the door, if he can get through the door, take that hose, stick it up his nose, pull it, let it go till it's empty, and then when you're through, take that pretty red container and hit him over the head. Or you could get some kind of broken glass held with a cloth, a pair of scissors, a knife, whatever the case. Now, I do send my 21-year-old daughter to school every day with a deadly weapon. That ballpoint pen you see there. Hey, you go, oh, that's not a deadly weapon. But let me tell you, it certainly can be. And how does that work? Well, actually, there's a fellow, former police officer that wakes up every morning because he's a quadriplegic. And how'd that happen? Because somebody took a ballpoint pen and stabbed him in the neck. It can be a lethal weapon. but I'm not going to suggest you stab them in the neck. No, you go for an easier target. You stab for the eyes, and I understand that's gross and unpleasant, but ladies and gentlemen, this is when we must shift our thinking to a survival mindset. This is what you must do at this point in the game. If you get to this point, you must do whatever it takes so that you survive and go home alive. Question: is your car a weapon? Absolutely, folks. Let me share a story. Here a couple of years ago, I'm backing out of the driveway at home. The phone rings. It's the command center. Mr. Daniel, we have an active shooter in progress on Law Street just off of Whistling. Thanks. So I get there as quick as I can, and my timing is perfect. I get there just after the officers have taken the shooter down. Now, there's been about a 30-minute engagement where that he was shooting, and then the officer got there and started shooting back at him. And here's what happened. On Law Street, there's these nice condos. They have garages attached. That Monday morning, 10 people all did the same thing. One at a time, they backed out of their garage, pulled up to the gate. The gate opened that Monday morning like every day. And they started to pull out. But parked at the curb, parallel to the curb, is this guy's little green Porsche. And he is leaning up against it with a .45 in his hand. As people exit the gate, he's firing rounds right through the windshield. Now, they don't have a survival mindset. So what do you do in a case like that? You resort to instinct. What is the instinctive reaction? Whip the car to the left, flee the threat, and get away. And that's what all 10 of them did. Then they went down the street about half a block, pulled into the shopping center, and waited for help to arrive and give them the necessary aid that they needed. What if the first person that morning out of the gate had this predetermined survival mindset? Instead of turning the car to the left, flee the threat, and get away, what if he or she went straight ahead, gave it the gas, rammed that guy, pinned him between their front bumper and the side of his little Porsche? 9 more people would not have been shot whatsoever. And I would suggest the odds are quite good. That brave individual would not have been shot any worse than he or she was anyway. Survival mindset in this crazy world we live in, ladies and gentlemen, is so vital, so essential for every one of us to possess. Combat breathing. All right, this is a technique our snipers are taught in the military, how to combat breathe, but something more domestic, it's the same thing as Lamaze breathing. That's how, when you're having a baby and you're trying to get control, that's critical. And how do we do this? Well, we breathe in to a count of 4. It helps begin to stabilize things. We hold our breath to a count of 4, and we exhale to a count of 4. We do it 4 or more times. And that truly helps us get ourselves a little bit more under control. Next time you're really stressed out about whatever, give this a try. I think you will find it does help you get yourself under control. And perhaps you avoid saying some things to someone that later on you would truly regret. So it's one more technique. But we've got to the final option. We tried running, didn't work. We tried hiding, that fizzled out. We're going to have to go hands-on, face-to-face, and fight this guy. There's no other option. Folks, you can do this, but it's going to take a radical mindset change. As an example, you as a parent or grandparent, the day this lunatic shows up, you're at the mall with that child or grandchild, and we all know what's going to happen. That child is going to be right there in harm's way. My question, are you capable of getting incredibly vicious and violent in order to save that child? Absolutely, there's no question. That's the way we all are, folks. Now, you must control your emotions. You can't let your emotions take over. When you just throw in the towel and let your emotions take over, The only option is to die at the hands of the shooter. But now here's one more little technique you might want. It's called swarming, okay? Remember on 9/11, the airliner flying over the fields of Pennsylvania? All right, what did those brave young men do in that aircraft? They swarmed the cockpit, they took those terrorists down. I understand that plane nosedived into the ground, everybody on the plane died. But if they had not done that, ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that fuel-laden aircraft would have imploded into our nation's capital, and thousands of people would have died if that had not taken the place. All right, so swarming, just one more tactic that you might avail yourself of. But here's the most important right there, critical thinking. That is you with your predetermined survival mindset, folks. And let me give you an example. Sandy Hook. They had a lockdown policy like schools pretty much everywhere. But can you believe there were 2 teachers at Sandy Hook that said, no, kids, follow me right now. They bail out of the classroom, run down the hall, out the door. They run up the hill to the fire station. Do you know not a child, not a teacher in either of those 2 classes was harmed whatsoever because of the critical thinking of those 2 creative, intelligent teachers? And unfortunately, what they left behind was an absolute tragic bloodbath of 20 precious children and 6 educators. So critical thinking, again, ladies and gentlemen, makes absolutely all the difference in the world in one of these life or death critical situations. Every officer in our department's been through 2 days of intense active shooter training. I can testify to that. I'm the only civilian that's gone through it. It's a real deal. We're trained to take the fight to the bad guy. Let me share a little background. In the days of Columbine, officers across this country were pretty well trained. Patrol, you get there on scene, you set up a perimeter. Nobody goes in, nobody goes out. SWAT comes across town, they go in and deal with the problem. But after that was over, we sat down and analyzed the situation and said, you know, we kept hearing way too many shots on the perimeter as we held that line, and we know people were being killed. So we changed the protocol. Now, pretty much, first officer on scene gets there, gets geared up. Usually they're wearing a bulletproof vest, but normally we tell them, put that second bulletproof vest on that you carry in the back of your patrol unit, and then grab that long gun that you have, but then stand by. And you wait for one more officer to show up, do the same thing, and then the 2 of you go in to solve the problem. But then Sandy Hook came along, and remember, it only took 4 minutes for 26 people to die. So we changed our protocol yet again. And now we tell them, you get there, you get geared up, whether you have backup or not, officer, you go. You go to stop the killing, period. Now, unfortunately, that can have some very dire consequences. About 5-6 weeks ago, up in Colorado, we saw that where there was an active shooter at a mall. Officer responds, jumps out of his unit. He only has his pistol. I'm assuming he had one vest on. I don't know that for a fact. Regardless, he did as he was trained. He went in to try to stop the killing, and unfortunately got himself killed. That's the unfortunate reality. So we've looked at our firearms, our tactical training. Long guns, we now have, about, 1,400 officers certified to carry assault rifles, should they need them for these terrible actions, all right? We also teach officers what we call the priority of life skill. Officer, you get on scene, you have to make that critical life and death decision for yourself. We're telling you right there, hostages, innocent bystanders, you're going to give them the first opportunity to get out of this terrible situation. Because you, the officer, are second-class citizens in this situation. Every officer, once upon a time, raised his or her right hand, and in essence what they said, if it is absolutely necessary, there is no other option. I will put my life on the line for the citizens of Houston, Texas. If you come down to headquarters, 1200 Travis, we have a nice museum on the ground floor that's free. At the back is that granite wall you see there. Unfortunately, we now have 121 names on that wall. That represents 121 men and women that fulfilled that promise to you and me that we live in a relatively safe city. So, ladies and gentlemen, next time you see an officer and you see that badge up there on his or her chest, tell yourself this. When they came to work today, they promised their boss a lot more than I ever promised my boss. Those are the men and women of the Houston Police Department. But what about these guys, suspects? Well, if you watch the news media, you know we're going to do everything we can to kill them right off the bat. Please, don't believe everything you hear in the media, folks. Let me give you an example. Here a few weeks ago, I'm talking to my associate, Lieutenant Rick Besselman, who runs our SWAT program, and it was on a Monday. I said, so what's up? He said, well, we got a call out this morning about 3 o'clock downtown. We get there, here's this guy with a gun. He's holding a pistol on a bunch of folks. I said, okay, so did you take him out? No, we didn't. I said, so what'd you do? He said, we shot him with a beanbag shotgun, knocked him on his backside, and cuffed him and took him to jail. Now my question, ladies and gentlemen, do you really want to face down a guy with a real gun and all you got's a beanbag shotgun? That's not my choice. I'm sorry. But that's the reality. And he says, Stephen, let me share something with you. This is for 2021. He says, this is the 5th time in 2021 we have done that. 5 times they've put their lives on the line to take a suspect alive. That is not a story that plays well in the media. The media doesn't want to hear that kind of risk that our officers are taking on a fairly regular basis to save the lives of these suspects, but that is the reality of your Houston Police Department. Now, when the officers arrive, the first officer on scene, he's going to get geared up, he's going to be ready to go, he's going to have a long gun, and he's not going to stop for victims. He comes in the building, you're laying in the lobby, you've been shot. You got 5 minutes before you bleed to death. We will walk right past you. Officer gets shot in the hall. Where he drops, we leave him. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not stopping for anything or anybody until we take the shooter down, because he's going to continue to kill. But that's why it's so important that we all know the fundamentals of first aid for gunshot wounds. That is so vital, so critical. Now we're going to the sound of the killing. That is our job, is to go directly to the sound of the killing, not stopping for the wounded or any other reason. Go to stop the killing, period. Now, when we get there, don't do anything that can be seen as aggressive. We don't know who the shooter is at this point, so raise your hands, spread your fingers. That is critically important, all right? And the officers may ask you to lie on the ground. If they do, just do as directed, all right? And officers are trained in hand skills. Stop and think. Hands hold guns, knives, throw punches. Hands do all the evil things, ladies and gentlemen. So the next time you're out driving along and you look in that rear view mirror and you see those beautiful red lights inviting you to pull to the side of the road so you can get better acquainted with one of our fine officers, pull over safely, roll down your window, put your hands on the steering wheel, and wait for that officer to approach from his or her unit. Now, it may take a few minutes, but be patient. They will come up. And you may or may not notice what they do as they're walking up to your vehicle. They likely will put their hand on the back trunk of your vehicle. What are they doing? They're putting their fingerprints on it. Just in case this thing goes south, we can prove that vehicle was the vehicle at the scene, all right? Now, they get up to your window. You listen to what they say. Follow their directions. Don't worry about rummaging through your purse or backpack to get your license or your insurance. Listen to what they say and do precisely as they instruct. And if you have a weapon in the car, that's okay. With your hands on the wheel, simply tell the officer, "Officer, I do have my weapon in the vehicle." That officer will then tell you exactly what he or she wants you to do. Listen carefully and do exactly as that officer tells you to do or not to do. That is incredibly important, folks, okay? Now, in conclusion, it's really important to be calm, and by having your predetermined survival mindset, the odds are in your favor that you're able to do that, and by doing so, now you can follow the directions of the officers. We may handcuff you, relax, we got keys, we'll let you go after the situation is stabilized. Be prepared to see people die. This is not a pleasant experience. But what is the one important thing that you accomplish? That you go home alive. That is it in a nutshell, folks. And the best way to go home alive is by having your own personal, unique survival mindsets that apply to the world you live in. So on the worst day of your life, give us a call at that number, and we will be there as quickly as humanly possible. Now, I do this training throughout Houston for any type of organization, and there is no charge for the training. If you would like this for your poker group, for your Rotary Club, for whatever group you associate with, there are my phone numbers, my cell phone, my desk phone at headquarters. Give me a call. I will be glad to get you on the schedule and come out and present the same training directly to your organization, because the goal that we all have are equipping people to survive in these terrible situations of active shooting. Thank you. Appreciate your time and attention today. God bless.